Welcome to the Nexus podcast player spotlight. We've spoken about Hydra on the podcast a lot, and I mean a lot. Is it tier 0? Is it dominant? We've just talked about it a lot. And it turns out at Wolverhampton, there was only 2 Hydras in top 8, both of which are on your screen, but only one of them actually managed to get through to top 4. That wasn't me, by the way. And that was my good friend, Josh. So, Josh, how are you doing, man?
Hello, everyone from the Nexus podcast and watchers. Huge fan, debatably the biggest one. So fight me if you disagree. I'm doing good. Very much still hyped about the tournament and the results. Very pleased. And it was just a very fun weekend, and just looking forward to it for a long time. And the hype definitely paid off.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, you've definitely made your mark on the competitive scene a reasonable amount, going EXO in day 1, which is an amazing accomplishment. Well done to you on that.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. But you totally heard nothing there. But one thing I think would be good for people to know is, can you give us a bit about your kind of like TCG background?
Oh, I'd love to. So I've been playing TCGs since I was young. Obviously, when you're young, you start with the sort of Pokemons, the Yu-Gi-Ohs, and I definitely didn't play it properly, as obviously I imagine a lot of like younger kids didn't. But if I was to go off my first actual TCG that I was very much invested into was Future Card Buddy Fight, my absolute favorite card game, which is how me and Kieran actually met. One fateful locals encounter, and here we are today in sharing top spotlights in BSS tournaments. So yeah, Buddy Fight, and then we moved on to, after Buddy Fight died, unfortunately, it went to I sort of split between Vanguard and Gate Ruler for a bit, and now it's BSS. By a bit of a surprise, to be honest. I wasn't really planning to get into it, and then Kieran obviously mentioned he was starting it, and went to the the launch event, and I was thinking, oh, should I get into it? And I was like, okay, let me do a quick demo deck session with Kieran, and since then, that's pretty much been my main game now, and I'm absolutely loving it.
Yeah, I mean, we have a nice little group at the Play Nation local scene, as Josh mentioned. Buddy Fight was the main game that we first kind of got introduced. That died, and then the group moved on to Vanguard for a bit. I wasn't part of that part, but then we went to Gate Ruler, which is better left unspoken about. Shout out to Gate Ruler, by the way, announcing Set 6 in English today, just over, I think it's been 420 something days since the last set came out in English, so we're going very, very strong with that. But really, we've kind of all just played the same kind of games roughly, so it's really great to see Battle Spirits was the one that we all picked up as a group, and also our locals supporting it as well. I know we've had a bit of a tough time with Play Nation supporting certain games that we do decide to play. So it's great to see everything. And, we've spoken about certain other members like Kian in the past. He's part of our group as well. And it was great to see Kian do really well at the previous, UK Grand Open, getting his first top 8. And competitively for him, he had never done anything like that. And I mean, that kind of goes back to you, right? Because competitively, you hadn't had any tops previously before this, right?
No, so no tops at all. I left it a bit late, but essentially the first sort of official tournament I went to was a Buddy Fight London Regionals just before lockdown and COVID happened, which I think I placed like 44, somewhere in like the 40, like about middle of the class. And I was playing Curse Dragons, as a lot of people know. Curse Dragons is one of my favorite decks. So if you ever saw a Curse Dragon player at London 2019 Buddy Fight Regionals, that was me. Hello. But yeah, apart from that, didn't really do any competitive events. I've been to Springfest for Vanguard here and there. Just sort of like a casual thing. Just attend, have a bit of fun. But yeah, this was my first competitive top, and I am a bit shocked still to this day that I've actually gotten this far as well. I think especially after the last track record I had at Liverpool, which I'm sure we'll go into detail a little bit later. But yeah, first competitive top being BSS, so very, very pleased.
I mean, you mentioned that the Battle Spirits journey kind of started with doing demos with me. You know, we got the demo deck out, you and me. It was the Reds demo deck, and that meta was not fun because it is just who walls up the most amount of monsters and then goes sideways. Um, but what kind of, I guess, besides myself and other people getting into Battle Spirits, what do you like about the game? What made you kind of get very heavily into the game?
So I definitely think it's a very, I guess, competitive, friendly game in the sense of, a lot of skill does pay off, and it's not sort of there's not really many RNG elements to it apart from the sort of normal TCG RNG, which is just did you see the right cards or did you not? I like the core system. I find that very interesting. The fact you have life becomes your resource as well. Kind of like not in the sense of like Vanguard or there's another game I'm thinking of, sort of like Gate Roller in a way. I just think it's a very interesting system, and I think that the way the game plays out is very straightforward, so it's also quite easy to get into. As we discussed, obviously, with buddy fight players, and I think the one thing about buddy fight which can get very confusing is the counter system. Whereas not Gate Roller, sorry, Battle Spirits just adapts the very back and forth. None of this like I don't know, like chaining system that gets out of hand. It's very just 1, 2, 3 sort of thing.
Yeah, there's no chaining, there's no flashing during the main phases, like, because in games like Yu-Gi-Oh and Buddy Fight, you would have I summon my monster, I declare the effect, you chain your thing, I have to use my costs, so I have to discard before you can. It gets really complicated, but in Battle Spirits, it's quite simple, quite straight to the point, and there's a few weird rulings of cards like Star Blessed Draw, but other than that, I think the game is relatively quite simple, right?
Yeah, very. Definitely from picking up the demo deck, I learned very quickly. And like I said, it was very straightforward to pick up. And obviously, definitely having a demo deck to start with is very good, where you have the same cards. You're on like a very even playing field just to get the mechanics in. And like you said, it's either whoever walls up or sees, I can't remember the name of the card, there's something bomb, like Flare Bomb or whatever it is, where it kills a unit of 3,000 or less, something like that. So it's very, very simple game to start off. It obviously gets a bit more advanced as you learn the game more and branch out to different cards and decks. But that's what I like about it, is that it does offer you that reward if you really invest into the game.
Yeah, and I think some people are gonna look at this and they're gonna say, "Oh, he just played Hydra because it's really really good," But I mean, there's a lot more to it than just that, I mean, you didn't just pick up Hydra or Blue because it's meta, right? Do you want to give a bit of history about kind of your main color and how it came to be your main color? Because obviously it wasn't out from the get go, right?
Right. So another thing about when I started the game, I wasn't initially planning to get into it, and then Kieran showed me some blue cards from the Japanese game.
I begged
Aesthetically,
you
I
to,
liked it.
actually.
Well, yeah, he flashed the old reliable of like, oh look, there's a blue card, it looks cool, and it adapts the sort of themes that I like of like the ocean, like sea life, that sort of thing. So anyone who knows me in the sort of Vanguard sense, Aquaforce is my favorite clan, and Maelstrom's my favorite unit. And anything in general, like I've always loved the ocean and etc. etc. So he showed me some cards that were blue. I was like, nice, and then he told me that the first blue cards that were coming out were mill based, which I absolutely love mill. In my buddy fight sort of history, I've always adapted like mill decks, so Abigail and I guess Dark Venom Dragons to an extent, but mainly Abigail, and I've always enjoyed mill decks. So yeah, it was pretty much the theme 100% hooked me, the playstyle hooked me, and I was playing white until blue came out, which I do like white, but as we've sort of discussed, it's a bit in the mud now. But definitely blue's always sort of been, it's also my favorite color, so that's also another thing to add. So I think regardless of what's good or not, I was playing blue. When Crush came out, it was my main deck, and I stuck with it for, I think straight 3 months until the new set came out, which I still love my Crush deck. It's probably my favorite deck. And I did play at the Liverpool regionals, or the Grand Open, sorry. I did not place very well, but I was very committed to the blue, and I think I must have come a very low number. I think it was like 58th, but I was enjoying the deck that I like, basically. So I think from the start I would have been a blue player had it have come out with the original trial decks, but unfortunately I had to wait a little bit to get my my favorite color. So yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, if there's anyone who is the meta sheep around here, point towards me. I own pretty much every single deck in the game that I just want to play, right? Not you. But and I mean, like let's not forget, like that Hydra deck is pretty blinged out, right?
Yeah, so this is another thing, which sounds kind of funny, but regardless of whether Hydra was good on paper or not, I still would have been picking it up. I still probably would have max raritied it. Again, like I'm just a blue player, to put it simply. Like I've played a lot with Crush, and I think I've sort of got my ideal build for the minute. And I've sort of, I tested very hard after that Liverpool, and everyone will know that I'm the blue, like main blue player at my locals. I'm part of Nirvana gang over Mandala, but that's a whole other debate for another day. But definitely, yeah, I maxed out the Hydra deck, not in Evangelion promos, or not promos, sorry, artworks. But yeah, it was pretty much a set in stone max rare. Yeah, it's blue. It fits all the themes that I like, and I was going to be playing this deck regardless whether it was good, whether it was bad. I just love blue, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think you said something that some people may want to know, and I know you said let's talk about another day, but why not while we have you here? Is why Nirvana over Mandala, and what's the history of Mandala? Because that's a pretty interesting one.
Oh, I'm very glad you asked. So the first, so for the Liverpool tournament, I decided, okay, I should probably get some mandalas for the white matchup, because after testing, I was thinking like, sometimes you don't see your Nexus all the time, or I think the build that I was running didn't suit Mandala as well, unless you sort of drag the game out of it. So I thought, let me buy 3 copies of Mandala for about £45, and in time for the tournament. They didn't end up getting used very well. I think I milled 12 once and I still lost the game. So that was also an eye opener. But I think I just find that Nirvana with, like, don't get me wrong, I think Mandala is still a good card, even in blue and mill and whatnot. I just think, in more certain situations, or as we've seen, Mandala does well in very non-blue decks, whether it's rainbow or some sort of other white build, perhaps that mills. I just find that Nirvana combos with the rest of the Crush deck a lot better. So naming Bulldog, for example, you can ramp with his Crush. The Nexus Aquapolis, that's a Crush unit, so it gains the power boost. Also with Dragolem, which is a very strong card when you can get Nirvana out and sort of force your opponent, if they need to block, then, oh, look, I'm milling an extra 5. And then if you have Bulldog on the field, you ramp again. So I just find that, like I said, he works better with the rest of the deck, in my opinion, and also having a very high statted card on the board with Raid has also proven to be very strong. So like I said, I'm not dissing Mandala completely, but in a deck where your hand size isn't always huge, and specifically having to discard Crush units, you don't really want to, sort of break with it or have him on the field, but then that's it. He doesn't do anything else unless you have a Crush unit in hand, perhaps. So that's my take on it. If you want to argue with me on that, by all means, feel free. But I will always believe, I think Nirvana's the better Crush unit, to say the least. So yeah.
I think that kind of just goes to show that you're not just a blue hype main, right? Like blue is your color. Even if blue is bottom tier, you're playing blue regardless, right?
Exactly. As saw by my Liverpool results, I managed to match 3 blue mirrors, which I didn't expect that day, but I think it was sort of towards bottom table, so maybe it was somewhat expected. But we definitely had a good laugh, and it was nice to talk to all the other fellow blue players, such as I guess shout out to Brandon, who I think was my last matchup for that game, and we just sort of memed and had a good laugh, and just discussed with all the other blue players about what the current list looks like, and definitely finding out some cards are very strong in the mirror or certain situations. So yeah.
And one thing I do want to touch upon, especially kind of going back to your Wolverhampton performance, is because, as you said, this is really your first proper competitive top in any of TCG really you've ever played, and there's going to be a bunch of people out there who still don't have their single one, or maybe they've just also got one, and I think they may kind of want to know. Yeah, and on the channel we've covered Alex Blandon, Caleb Albert, all these players with multiple tops, and they've all shared their experiences about being a consistent player, and I think it would be kind of nice to hear from someone who is their first top. Kind of how did it feel on the day, like as the rounds were going by? Because we kind of knew that to guarantee top cut you had to go 5-1 minimum, right? You only one loss is what you could afford. So like how did it
Yeah.
feel, let's say, going into, let's say, round 4 undefeated?
I don't know. It was very weird. Like, it's one of those things where I think having my expectations definitely for the event, I felt like, oh, maybe something's going to go wrong, or I don't know, maybe I'm not going to do as well. I think where as long as you're having fun and you join, you sign up to a tournament with the idea that you're going to have fun, you're going to meet loads of players. It's always good, and I think just obviously winning the games, just obviously winning's fun. I don't mind losing. I always find it as like a learning thing, and as long as you're having fun, that's the main thing. But I definitely started to think, oh wow, okay, I seem to be doing pretty well here. Just keep my cool. I think that's always something important. You just want to keep like a level head while playing. But yeah, I was just like, oh wow, okay, I seem to be doing pretty good here. So yeah, I was just having a good time. I think just generally, as the matches went further on, you think, oh wow, okay, maybe we've got a chance at doing decently here. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of. Yeah, go on.
When was like the idea of top cut like actually kind of in your head? Like was it round 4, 5, or was it like once it was a guaranteed going into round 6, or did you not even think about it?
Part of me wasn't thinking about it. I think maybe where I haven't topped before. The whole having this certain score in my head means I'm getting the top or not. Like I was more than happy to get top 32, top 16, whatever was there. It was mainly for like the fact that the finalist Floodstream was in there. So as a blue player, I was quite eager to get a shiny version of that. I definitely think probably round 4 it started to settle in against my game against Aoife, I believe. I hope I haven't butchered your name, sorry. Where I think that was the first matchup I was very unsure about. As you know, obviously me and you are very much big locals buddies and play test a hell of a lot. So she was playing white tempo, which, as we tested, I definitely didn't have a good track record against during locals. This is pre-frog. It's pretty much same build, just no frogs, which the frog surprisingly didn't come up that much, but I just thought, okay, well, that's one of my scariest matchups, or the scariest matchup that I've gone against, and I've won. So I think after that, I definitely had it in my head, okay, maybe I'm going to get somewhere with this. Because just quickly, I don't know if people know my matchups, but my first game was white aggro against Frankie. Second game was Purple Serpent Curse against Ben, who's one of our locals and a long-time friend of mine. So shout out to him. Big up Ben. One day he'll get his top and we all pray for it at Play Nation. And then Aoife with the white tempo. And then my last 2 matches were Red Ira, which was Thomas, and Harry, our champion. It was my last game in Swiss. So yeah.
Yeah. It was a good, and I think one funny thing that people may not know is I mean, what were the results on your games? Because there was an interesting pattern, wasn't there, in terms of your scorelines?
Yeah, so my first game was 2-0 to me. I probably shouldn't have specified that because I went flawless technically, but well, kind of. I don't know, however you want to look at it. But yeah, 2-0 against Frankie, which was playing white aggro. And I do want to give a big shout out here to Kieran, who gaslit me into just the day before deck building. I wanted to put a Gleeky, the vanilla for blue, into my list because I had a sort of spare slot. And I was like, okay, I'll just chuck it in there. And then Kieran's like, no, Raging Tide is probably the better shout because of all the aggro stuff and purple being, a very heavy 3-cost deck. And then even the morning of the tournament, I woke up, I'm like, I'm really not sure about this. This sounds very bricky. However, against Frankie, I got quite sweeted by my deck, I should say, and drew very well, which sounds silly, but I managed to see some Raging Tides and Flood Streams, which definitely helped out game 1 and 2, which we sided 2 in as well. So I think my deck was very tailored to white aggro. So seeing that first round and getting out of the way definitely was a sigh of relief, because white aggro is a very explosive deck, and if you're not careful, it can kill you very quickly. And especially as a Hydra player, we definitely do need a bit of time to set up. Some games you don't, but as sometimes in this game, you can high roll very high or very high roll not at all, and it will show.
What was the scariest deck? Like, what was the deck you were probably the most afraid of seeing in that tournament?
Probably any sort of white deck, whether it was tempo or control. Purely for the fact of I've tested again. Like, I think our games, I can't remember the exact record. I think it was like 8-1, maybe something like that.
I think it was one. I think it was 10-1. Like, in terms of
10-1.
Just your record against white without frogs. It was tough. We found out, and I think the one game you did get off it was the ancient draw top deck into the +5k buff to completely destroy my Frost Tiger blocking you.
Yeah. So yeah, we can get into that a bit later on with the sort of deck build if we go into that. But yeah, definitely that game I should not have won. I would like to preface this. I just thought, okay, let me put some cores on Ruby Sanctuary, kill something, and hope I draw into an Eye Shield. Then it was the Ancient Draw. And then I was like, oh, hang on a minute. I have reduction on board for red. Let me pay some cores. And the power boost went through, which was still very risky because white having a discounted suppression, that they can drop that one or two of those, and that's it over pretty much. So yeah, definitely white was my scariest matchup. I think where she was running tempo, maybe I had a bit of a better chance because I didn't actually end up seeing any tigers. But I guess with tempo, you can also rush the opponent down still, which was something I have to be very cautious of. And I think the way I play Hydra, I do play it relatively passive most of the time. But, don't attack unless you need to. Set up, and then when Hydra comes down, that's when you can start using your board a bit more. But definitely, I think initially white tempo / control, but then also perhaps red as well. But that's only because I hadn't tested against red as much. I think I had a couple games with on the online locals, so tune in for that, guys, if you're not already. It's very fun and a good way to earn some promos and cool prizes. So yeah.
Every week. So I think let's just kind of ask it. I mean, your day 2, well, essentially, I guess top 8. You play against Frankie a second time, and I was sitting next to you that time, and there were moments because I knew you was white aggroing against Hydra, and I remember there was times I would glance over to your hand mid-match, and I was looking at this like 2-eye shield, Floodstream plus a Raging Tide hand against white aggro, and you must have felt like the gods were blessing down you in this top 8 match, surely.
Yeah, I must say, whoever's up there, whoever's looking out for me, definitely did when the travel voucher was on the line. Yeah, I opened very well, I must say, with the Raging Tides, the Flood Streams, but again, that also comes down to the deck building. People say, yeah, it's lucky in your top deck, but, when you have 3 Flood Streams main deck and then 2 Raging Tides in main, game 1, hopefully you'll see them. And yeah, definitely opened very well. I did win the first game. However, game 2, I did lose. And then the final round was very scary. I genuinely thought I was going to lose that game. I think it just come down to sort of Frankie was 1 core short. And it worked in my favor. Well, obviously worked in my favor, I guess. And yeah, I ended up winning the game, and I was just in shock. I was like, wow, like I genuinely thought I was going to lose that, and to manage to pull it back. Especially, I don't know if his list ran, the Callista card, Valkyrie Callista, but I must say, as a blue player, we very much hate that card because double unblockable is scary, and you can't flood stream it as well. So that's another thing to note.
Absolutely not. But so how did it feel being there in like top 8 tables?
Very, very strange, I must say. Normally, whenever I go to an event, or mostly whenever I go to an event, the top tables I will see usually people, the sort of familiar names in the community. Kieran, obviously, you being one of them, I must say, as I was there for your Liverpool finals, watching the entire final game, and I must say, what an absolute game that was. And I was very happy to see that happen. Yeah, it was just yeah, it just felt very like sort of honouring, and it just felt weird that I'm sort of the one on the table, not spectating. Which I just felt very proud, and I guess it was just all those months of like playing blue consistently and just constantly trying out this deck and seeing what I can do with it. Definitely paid off, and obviously it shows. So yeah.
Absolutely. Do you have like any, I can say for myself, like once I've done well in an event, I kind of have like these like lucky charms, these things that I feel like I just need to have, otherwise the day's not going to go well. If anyone's ever met me, I have my 2017 Bushiroad World Finest mat still in the wrapper, and I've taken it to 4 events and I've topped all 4 of them. Like after this first top, do you have like any tradition, ritual, lucky charm you're going to make sure to bring to the next event?
It's hard to say because it's my first one, so there's so many I could potentially pick. I just have to sort of figure out which one's a lucky thing. So my first, well, if we're going off sort of like you said, your play mat, maybe a lucky charm. I had the Mandala play mat that you could obtain from the Grand Opens. I did end up buying that, so before anyone says I earned it, no, I didn't.
Mandala
I
was
got it.
that's kind of funny. Mandala was the mat after slagging him off the most, right?
Yeah, I'm praying that's not the case, that he's the lucky charm, because if not, I'm going to be absolutely shot down by the Mandala gang. But I don't know if there's any sort of ritual. I, I guess I don't know. Maybe just being with my friends was always is a good time. I always get a good vibe when we travel, and it's very much a lot of fun. The only other things I could think of that maybe were lucky was this Gurren Lagann necklace and my Ring of the Lucii from Final Fantasy 15, which if you guys don't know, there's a ring. It's in the box next to me. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll have to go to another event and see what the lucky charm is. But yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe I just don't know what it is yet. But it's definitely, I'm sure there's something there.
I think you'll figure it out. And I mean, just before we kind of touch upon that very quickly, I mean, your top 4, you played against Thomas, you played against Swift in Swift, and you managed to beat him in Swift. But what happened in Top Cut?
Yeah, so unfortunately, my hand wasn't great in the sort of finals games. I definitely think I probably should have mulliganed, but then it's also hard for me to say that because I feel like with the way that Thomas was playing, also shout out to him, great guy, and it was absolute pleasure playing against him. Definitely had a strong opening. I think the blue versus red matchup does come down to, can you stick a Nexus for more than one turn? And can you set up, get some cores ready, get the board sort of going? Because once you can get a board, it's not too bad. Even after, when they start popping Nexuses, it's not too bad. It's the initial setup that gets very painful when you have to keep playing Deep Walker for 4 cores, put a core on them, and you still have barely anything to work with. And then you've got stuff like Andromeda, pops Nexus, and has Confront. So yeah, I don't know. It didn't go in my favor for the top 8 game. Top 4 game, unfortunately. But again, I still think it was an honor to have come this far with how I did, and it would have been nice to obviously top the whole thing. Had there not been a day 2, then technically I would have been like the champion. But regardless, I had a great time, and I think I'm very proud of myself, and I still look at it with a smile pretty much the entire event, and I'm very happy that another Play Nation goer was the champion. Absolutely. And never had the Nexus podcast. So yeah, at the end of the day, I always like seeing my friends win. That's something that has always been true to me.
And I mean, Play Nation Games has been doing insanely well at these events, just to say. So if you're looking for our locals, make sure to travel down to come to Play Nation. And just kind of one of the more last touching points, I wanted to kind of touch upon some of the cards in your deck. I'm sure I'm sure Emiliano will put the deck list somewhere on the screen. Thank you, Emmy, in advance. But you went for a red Hydra build. And I want to touch upon some of the red techs and kind of get your insight as to why those cards are even in the list. I don't think we need to talk about why Hydra, Lighthouse, or those cards are in the list. I think we should hopefully all know that by now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think the first card I want to touch upon is the promo Sham Shirasha. The one
Yep.
drop, with 3 cores on top of it, when destroyed, you get to choose a spirit card with a send from your trash and return it to your hand. Some would say it's like a really slow Impaler Forest, and people have done for the Impaler Forest variant, but why this card and why not the purple variant that we've seen a lot?
That's a very good question. So initially, when it came to deck building, I think I decided on the red package quite early on, and it was something that I definitely thought I would stick with. And like you said, the other option was sort of going in Paler Forest, and even with my current red package, I was still considering trying Paler Forest. But part of me was like, I don't want to clog up with too many Nexus, and also, having a spirit's nice. Sometimes with obviously aggro running rampant, a one cost unit is very easy to get down, even if you just need it to block with. Um, that's yeah, that was something that I had to consider. Mainly as well because I'm running the red package. I thought let's try as many good red cards. Well, I say good, like any sort of red card I could tech in that would I could get some use out of. And what I find with Sham Shara, I'm just going to call it that because it's got a very funny name. It's a very low commitment card, which I think also played a part into my Nexus lineup. Where I can play it down for very cheap and still have cores to play with, whether I'm playing another red spell or just another blue card, and not get any reduction off it. And also just a way to fish back my Hydras. Also, I think it's a bit easier to play with, which sounds a bit silly, but where I don't really run Impaler Forest or purple cards is very that much. I feel like, I don't know, maybe I would have made a misplay, or it's just it's very easy. And also, something to note, which did come up in my matchups against Ben and some other people, was that you can Floodstream. You can Raging Tide the 1-drop during your turn, main phase. So it just says when destroyed. So regardless of how it gets destroyed, you'll get in your ascend back. So I had the turn where Ben killed my Hydra, didn't kill my red guy, and come to my turn, I main phase Raging Tide, get my Hydra back, ramp 1, and then I had a Hydra play down for that turn. So I definitely think the red promo was very, very good. And also shout out to Josh for getting me my second copy in time for the event. Yeah, I just thought, sort of stick with the red stuff as much as we can.
Yeah, I think people are looking at this list and they're going to see that Ruby Sanctuaries are in that list, and that makes perfect sense, right? Because obviously you proc the Ruby Sanctuary when Hydra pops a spirit, so that makes perfect sense. But I think the thing people might be looking at is they see your spell lineup. We've got 4 ancient draws and 1 Star Blessed draw. What's the reason? Did you swap the ratios around?
So I did get a bit of inspiration from the topping list that came out recently, where I ran 4 Star Blessed and 1 ancient draw. So I've always been a firm believer of ancient draw gang. Draw 2, discard 3. Sorry, not discard 3. Check top 3 to add a Hydra. Obviously, if you see a Hydra, that's great. That's always good, and definitely when your opponent sees it, they do get a bit worried, and then they sort of have to realize now they're on a bit of a timer. And also, it's like I think you guys mentioned the podcast before. It's someone said that it's just getting rid of 3 cards that aren't Hydra in a game where obviously you want to see it as quickly as you can. This definitely plays a factor. And as we discussed earlier in our testing, having a power boost as well at your disposal is very handy. I can't say it came up in this event particularly, but definitely at locals, there's been a fair few times in the Hydra Mirror or the White matchup where being able to flash a 5,000 power boost is huge. So that was definitely one of my main reasons. And also for the Star Blessed, this is kind of silly, but because I wasn't running any Star Blessed initially, I would always set my Ice Shield quite quickly. And I thought, okay, maybe because it's locals, I can just try a Star Blessed, just try and throw some people off. And I ended up putting it in the deck, and it just worked very well. And I thought just having an extra option to draw, also slightly cheaper than Ancient Draw. My whole logic is if I'm paying 5 for a draw spell, 4 for a draw spell, I could probably afford either, if that makes any sense. But I just definitely think having the extra draw power is always good. And certain matchups, sort of game on, maybe when you're against purple, they have a lot of when summons. It just gets you an extra draw too. So I thought we don't want to get too many draw spells in, because I feel like I would probably have to add a few more red cards in, more sanctuaries particularly. So I think, yeah, that like having sort of, like I said, it was a bit of inspiration from the topping list, having enough draw spells in my list, because obviously the color does suffer with draw power a little bit.
Yeah, that is one of Blue's traits. Uh,
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think just kind of touch upon the list very lastly, but is there anything you change about the list from how it performed?
So I definitely think that most of my lists I was quite happy with. Just off the top of my head, to name a few things, I would like to try Squalo. Maybe some less copies. I'm not sure 100% how I feel about that. I just wanted to try some other cards, perhaps Manscore, slightly cheaper cards. But you could also argue Swallow is a bigger boy. But it wasn't so much that; it was more the sideboard I wanted to change. I think. Essentially, in my matchups, I put 2 Mandalas in for the white, which never came up. And I think I would potentially change those out for some more Nexuses or Synthetrias, which against me and Harry's game, proved to be a very strong card when you can set up an up Nexus early game. She just keeps walling out your opponent. The Ira comes down, she comes back, token comes with it, and depending on your Nexus lineup, which I was running the Enchains, you get cores back as well. So that's probably something I would change. Other than that, there's not loads I'd like to change. There's some cards I would like to experiment with. But as I imagine this local's coming on Saturday, I'll probably try a few new techs. So yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. All right, so kind of wrapping up, I mean, this is your floor, mate. Give your thanks, give your shout outs. This is your moment.
Right, where do I begin? I think the biggest shout out for me is Mr. Kieran McNeil himself. As a lot of people might know or might not know, he's always been my sort of best buddy when it comes to playing cards, and sort of like a rival in a sense. I've always looked up to Kieran since my early buddy fight days as someone I want to beat or someone who I want to aspire to be as good as in that sense. And it definitely was an honor to be able to surpass him in this event, especially running the same list. Just Pollen does good for me. Pollen doesn't do good for him. I guess me being the blue player, maybe she was a bit biased, or maybe she has a thing against Kieran. We'll have to find out. So big shout out to Kieran also for helping me with the list a little bit with the Raging Tide, and also just sort of making sure I stuck to what I wanted to run. Because some people were saying maybe try a different build or try this, don't try this. But I was quite set in stone what I wanted to run, and Kieran definitely helped cemented that. One shout out to Kian and Ben, my 2 best buds as well, who come to Play Nation. I test a lot against Kian, and he's definitely one of the very good yellow players. And something that me and Kian, I guess, I could compare to is that he's always stuck with yellow. I've stuck with blue for a long time. So I definitely think advice to anyone is stick with the color you like, and it will pay off. And I don't know, there's a lot of shout outs I'd like to give. Definitely to Nexus podcast. Love the videos every single week. I'm always on that straight away. Great content, and it's obviously been a pleasure to be here. And I'm sure there's a lot of thank yous, but just thank you to Play Nation as well for being a great local support in our game. And that's probably it, I think, off the top of my head.
Yep, absolutely. And I mean, I'm sure we're going to see you at the Pro Tour with no information, but I'm sure we're going to be seeing you there, right?
100%. I'll probably be running blue, I imagine. So shouldn't be too hard, but who knows? Maybe we'll change it up. We'll see what the card pool's like and what the new sets have to bring, and see where we go from there. But I'll be very excited to attend my first Pro Tour as well.
Absolutely. And I've got one final question. I want the answer to be one word only, okay?
Oh no.
Crush or Hydra?
Oh. I think Crush. I feel like it's got to be Crush.
You've heard it here. You've heard it here. Crush over Mandala. Thank you very much just for coming on. I'm proud of you. We're all proud of you, and hopefully see you do very well once again.
Cheers. Thank you, guys. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and like and leave comments and whatnot. The usual stuff. So see you guys later.
See ya. Listen to this man.